big toilet paper.
Toilet paper.
Oh, well done. Oh, there's my tissues too. You have to blow my nose.
Just keep it here.
Thank you so much. I've got the tissues still anyway. Okay. I think we better. My watch is different from you people. It says here it says 3:35. What do you people say? What are you saying? 3:30, 3:35? What does your clock say? Oh, I know we're in India, but let's coordinate. 33, 33. Okay. Well, it's fast. Okay. I'm going to be late. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so was the discussion useful? It was useful, wasn't it? It's good. Okay, questions. We'll have 15 minutes of questions, and then we'll go into, it'll all come up, so we'll just carry on about karma. We'll talk about karma. Okay, go on. Uh-huh. Yep.
Hello. In our group, we spent most of the time talking about karma.
Okay, good.
And the nature of karma.
Uh-huh.
And a little bit of trouble. I was wondering if you could maybe describe a conducive attitude towards thinking about karma, and particularly about reincarnation. For if some people didn't have had trouble believing or accepting the idea of reincarnation.
Okay.
As
Can I get you to answer that? What have I said several times? What's the word I've used probably 20 times already in 24, not even 24 hours? I understand. Do you remember the word I have used, the attitude that you would take, what a scientist would do? What do you do?
I see it as a hypothesis.
Okay, so what is the problem with people? Why couldn't you in your group think about that, take it as a hypothesis? Do people understand what that means? I'm not trying to be rude now.
Maybe you could talk about that, yeah.
So then what came out of that? Were people prepared to do that?
Well, there was sort of an attitude of Buddha has to prove it to me kind of thing.
Oh, so it's Einstein's business to prove to you while you set that back lazily and say, I don't believe in relativity.
Yeah.
Give me your proof, mister. Come on, I don't believe people are saying this. I do believe it, but come on. Keep talking, so people
there was that, like, how to present that, or what is a way to help those people kind of switch and be a little bit more open to the idea. I mean, is it necessary to try to convince, or what's the best way to do that, to talk about it? Because, I mean, if they have their minds closed off to the idea...
But that's their problem. Why are you worried for them? Let them relax.
Okay.
You don't have to worry. That's not your business to ask that question. If people in your group feel they don't want to even hypothesize it, I'm not being rude or anything, hang on a tick, then you don't have to worry about that. Because listen, people, believe me, I know what you're talking about. But this is the point about it. Because it's called religion, we're used to thinking we should believe it. And then we're used to thinking, well, you know, kind of like, prove it to me. But how, if the topic was relativity, if the topic was mathematics, if it were anything, it's the same approach. You've got to have a mind that's prepared to think about it. If you haven't got a mind that's even prepared to think, well, it could be true, but it could not be true. See, that's the point. The normal approach to religion is you either believe it or you don't. Some people go to a Christian teaching, they get all blissed out and it feels like they like it, and I believe in Jesus, you know. But that's how we normally think of religion. And that's why I keep stressing this point. It's like science. So it's up to you people. You just have to, maybe you've listened for a couple of hours, maybe you've read some books. But there's no way I can sit here and talk about Buddhism from the big picture point of view, which is what I like to do, without bringing this in, because it's the big picture. We're very intelligent human beings. We don't have to be scared of anything. So you just have to relax and think, okay, maybe Buddha's some maniac, Maybe he's not true, but maybe he is. We've got to have that kind of objectivity, which isn't easy, I agree, because our minds have certain views and we're stuck in those views. And then we feel we have to argue, to kind of argue in a negative way to sort of, but just relax, hypothesize. That's it. I mean, there is nothing else. That's it.
Thank you.
And then you go one step at a time, because, you know, one step at a time. So your point over here was about that, wasn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think we have the same question. It's about...
Oh, that person there next to you, you were in that group, were you? Were you in that group?
No.
Okay, that's fine. That's cool. Go on.
I think the problem with having a hypothesis is that you have to have some sort of testable methods that you can use to evaluate.
Oh, so you're suggesting there aren't any?
No, I'm asking what the methods are.
What I'm giving you. Okay, you listen to it. First of all, you have to be intellectual. First of all, it's got to be intellectually coherent. A system has to be intellectually coherent, doesn't it? Okay, let's pretend you're what's that word they use for the allopathic doctor? What's the word? Is that the right word? And I can see this. My brother and my sister are chiropractors. They've been doing, you know, it's been sort of like 30, 40 years. Still in Australia, there are other kinds of doctors who think it's a lot of quackery, it's a load of rubbish. You all know what closed minds are all about, you know. So this is very normal in the world. Even if you never look into chiropractic, you can still talk to people who've been to chiropractors who are convinced that it works for them. Then okay, there's got to be something there. So you first have to have the first thing is you've got to want to listen. You've got to want to open the mind, to step back from the usual view and go, okay, let's give chiropractic a go. Now, most people, we're not like that. We don't want to. We'd rather stay in the system we have. You know, we'd rather do that. That's just how our minds are, you know. And so the point in Buddhism, by the way I'm saying things, you know, Buddha's not a creator. Now, already that should tell us something interesting, isn't it? If Buddha is not a creator, and he is a human being who, from his own experience, found something to be so and then presents it, straight away that tells you the system is there and it's all provable because he's a human being. Can you see the point I'm saying? Can you see the point I'm saying? If he's a human being who found from his own experience that what is now called Buddhism, this is how it is, and this is what you do, and this is the result you get, then already you can see it's all there to be tested and proved. It's all there. The entire system is there. But if we go from the Western point of view of believing that the mind is the brain, believing that our parents created us, believing that God created us, you're smashing into it. You can't go anywhere. So you have to have an attitude that wants to step back and know, okay, let's listen, and then go one step at a time. Because again, I mentioned it earlier, the Buddhist view of mind. When I gave that example of the Mind and Life conference in 2003, when the discussion wanted what is the capacity of the human mind to concentrate, and straight away from this you can hear the Buddhist view is a very radically different view. When it says that we have the capacity to concentrate for months on end, because Buddha suggests the mind goes to very subtle levels which don't depend upon the brain, and it's when you have that capacity to go to that level that you develop what they call clairvoyance, which is the capacity to see the past and to see the future. It's then that you can prove everything. The entirety of the Buddhist path, if it can't be verified and proved by a human being, then it is a load of garbage. This is the simple point to make. We're not used to hearing this kind of talk, because this doesn't sound like religion, because religion is beyond, it's from the person up high, it's revealed, and you can't prove it. It's not your business to prove it. I remember talking to some Catholic nuns, and they kept talking about, well, it's a mystery, it's a mystery. I said, what do you mean a mystery? Don't you want to understand it? Oh, no, we want it to be a mystery. Well, that's cool, I'm not complaining. But that's not the Buddhist approach. It's all verifiable by oneself. If Buddha can come up with it and then do it and then say this is the result, then clearly anybody can, because he's a human being. So it's all there. The system's all there to be verified. But a person has to want to do it. But the first step has to be even to get intellectually coherent about it, something's got to be intellectually coherent. I think you can present the entirety of acupuncture as a system without even starting to put needles into people. You have to have a system that within itself is coherent, Obviously assuming this and this and this and this and this, because everything assumes this and this and this and this and this. So you've got to be prepared to want to do that, to give it a go, So the way Buddhism is over the world, in the world, you know, you can go to a class of Vipassana and you'll never hear the word reincarnation. You'll never hear the word karma. It's all coming from the Buddha, but it's one aspect of Buddha's teachings. You'll go to a Zen class and they wouldn't even talk about reincarnation. I remember talking to a Zen monk. When does your mind begin? Oh, I don't know. That's not their concern. So I'm not complaining. I'm not saying anything wrong, but there's many aspects of Buddhism that have developed over the centuries in different countries for thousands of years, comfortably, but not the big picture. The Tibetans happen to, from the great Indian monastic universities, the tradition in Tibet has been one where you get the big picture. But not even in this place will you necessarily hear a person who teaches a class like I'm giving and hear the stuff that I'm saying. It's just this is my style. I like to give the big picture. I think it's like delicious stuff, you know, because I think these are all the questions we all ask. So I'm giving Buddha's answers, you know. So, anyway, that's my long answer. If that's satisfactory or not. The person next to you. There. Yeah.
So are you saying that by developing your meditative capacity at some point...
Start again, darling. I missed the first few words.
By developing your capacity for your meditative capacity, you'll be able to follow your river of your mental continuum back beyond the point of your own birth.
Oh gosh, yes, that's the point. Yes, of course, that's the point. Clairvoyance. Okay, let me talk. It's a good point to go a little bit more into that part. You know, about the nature of mind and how it has this capacity. We'll do that at some point, but that's absolutely the point, and that is, you know, that's from the Hindus too. They all assert consciousness goes to a subtler level, isn't the brain, and all of this, and these great meditators, that clairvoyance is not, you know, in the West, clairvoyance is some kind of, oh, I was an Egyptian princess 14 lives ago, you know, wow, you get little flashes of things. But it's something that is consistent and steady and that one is capable of accessing. It's a function of the subtler mind, which we never touch because we don't posit it in our culture. But yes, absolutely, that's the point.
So the methodology is meditation.
The methodology for training your mind to become more subtle and more... that's just the technical one, but you can't do that alone. It's got to be done with also removing all the pollution from the mind, which is the major thing that prevents our minds from seeing. I mean, forget seeing last life. If I've got anger in my mind and I can't even see you properly, I'm in trouble, you know. There's different levels of seeing. There's right here and now what's in front of us. We can't see a thing. We make up our own stories every minute. So it's the combination of working on your mind, being your own therapist, removing all the misconceptions, which is the toughest job, and training the mind in this technical way to have this capability to get more subtle and more refined, to be able to literally see more. Literally. Yeah.
My group had a couple questions. The first one, taking a simple example, was if you're a store or shop owner and someone comes to your store and steals a bucket of candy.
And what?
And steals a jar
yes,
of candy.
Yes, sure, yeah.
The example, the big picture was Tibet, China invading Tibet and them having to leave their own country. Mm-hmm. What is the response in the Buddhist philosophy? How you respond to?
So how do you respond to people harming you?
Because the person who brought up the question was saying how they're very much attached to their land.
Sure.
So how is the thought of non-attachment applied
the
to
general
Tibetans?
idea, I mean, this is all to do with understanding the way karma works, but just the general answer to this, every single day, every one of us has some experience when something unfair happens, isn't it? Some mean person does something and someone's rude to you. I mean, every day someone has. Forget about the major issues like the Tibetans or, you know, whatever. Forget those. But just every day there's something. So the whole point of what practice is, based upon this fundamental of the Buddhist view of morality, based upon the view of karma, you know, all of this, is to respond in an appropriate way every time. So if you walk into my shop, you're about to steal something, and it's not appropriate at the conventional level that you take what belongs to me, then I should do what I can to prevent you. The Tibetans very happily would like to have done what they could, and many did and continue to do what they can to get the Chinese out of their country, because it's just, conventionally speaking, not appropriate. But as I mentioned, even with my Tibetan monk friend, when I said to him, who'd been, you know, tortured and his family murdered and he escaped, and I said, do you ever get angry? And he laughed and said, what for? Then, you know, it's doing what you can. But we can see that the Buddhist answer to it would be, if the karma is so strong between the two of you that you're going to get my candy no matter what I do, then if I'm doing my best to stop you from taking my candy, and let's say I'm a Buddhist, and I don't try to harm you, I'm not wanting to harm you because that's just more negative karma for me. I'll try and prevent you, you know. But if I'm not successful, I will accept, okay, the karma was too strong and nothing much I could do. And you would accept it and you'd work with that like my Tibetan monk friend without having a mental breakdown, you know. But you'd still keep, you know, you'd lock your doors and you'd... So there's a way of living in the ordinary conventional world according to the ordinary laws of morality, you know, to protect yourself, but based upon morality, not based upon wanting to harm, you know.
And the second question was the similarities between the law of attraction and karma.
What's this law of attraction mean?
You put something out into the world, like for example, we keep talking about what you think, say, do, or seeds that you're implanting, and say you put something, you declare something, then you're going to attract people into your life or events into your life that are going to be conducive to allow that seed to blossom.
It just sounds what normally happens, isn't it? If I'm a tennis player and I decide I want to play tennis, well, guess what? I go find a tennis coach, and guess what? I'll find people to play tennis.
It's not so much about finding a tennis coach. It's not so much of going out and seeking a tennis
well,
coach.
what's the point?
It's so much that a tennis coach will enter your life.
Well, that's similar.
And who's perfectly conducive to your personality and whatnot. Like the universe is conspiring in a.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm sounding.
It seems similar to karma.
Well, I don't know. Is it? Maybe that's fine. If you like that, then that's good. But it's not quite.
Well,
I mean,
so
you listen, honey. You don't need to think.
Me,
yes, but it doesn't follow, does it? Because karma doesn't need you to think about it. You know, the person who had the candy stolen. You don't sit there thinking about, oh, my candy will get stolen. It got stolen, honey, because you did create the cause last time. So, okay, the broader point here is that yes, of course, every thought you have sows a seed in the mind. But the karmic way of answering will be, it mightn't ripen straight away, but it certainly will ripen at some point. So I hear what you're saying about this other one, and maybe yes and maybe no, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It doesn't sound quite like karma to me.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
We're thinking about karma in terms of different countries or whatnot, some developed countries and undeveloped countries, and we're wondering if it's a blessing or good karma or negative karma to places where they have developed countries where they have abundance and affluence materially, and then
you mean how come some people are rich and how come some people are poor?
And if it's a negative, or if it's a positive or negative karma, or
I understand. Just the general answer is, like I said, you know, whatever it is, any living being experiences, and this is one of the third ways we talked about with Lorette. I'm sorry. Lorraine. No, it is important. Lorraine. Norit. Oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you. Okay, now I hear it. Norit. Okay, beg your pardon. I kept calling her the other one. Okay, we use I mentioned briefly, and because now we're going to go into more about karma soon. We'll do it now when you finish your questions. But the third way that karma ripens, the third way that your actions from the past ripen in the present, is called the experiences, similar to the cause. So, let's be, intellectually analytical here, just the intellectual idea. If I am born into a situation where I'm starving, or I have very little money, or I can never get a job, or wherever it is, then that's an experience similar to a cause. What would be a cause of this? What would be a cause for this? Not having. What's the cause of not having and not being able to get when you need it and like that kind of thing? Being poor and stuff. What would be a cause? He has to answer me. You, sweetheart, you answer me. No, so obviously stealing and not giving is the cause of not getting, and I mean, in the simple way we can see this, right? So if I'm born in a place and it's abundant and I have beautiful, delicious food and I get jobs easily and whatever, then that's the result of generosity, isn't it? Isn't it? Wouldn't we say, according to this little kind of model? Yes. So, yes. But we're going to go into the karma in detail in a minute. We're going to go into detail, but please tell me your question. Who?
In Rwanda, where there's genocide, can you look at all Rwandans and say, oh, they had
negative.
Okay, isn't it interesting that you're asking it? Why don't you, maybe I'll ask you purposely to ask me a question about a country or a group of people where nothing bad happens, where it's very happy and very conducive and very good. Use that as your example.
I can ask that too.
No,
So
but why don't you ask that one? I'll answer that one for you.
the positive one.
The positive one, yeah.
Are all
How come some people have a happy life and a good harmony and not much robbery and good food and good health? That's the
Right,
question.
Let's talk
Would you like to have an
positive.
answer to that question? Because it's the same answer. Then
Yes, please.
you know the answer already, don't you? You can see it. It's an experience of somebody. And if you have a life that's called happy and pleasant and harmonious and people are good to you and you have a nice house and no one steals from you and you're healthy, or you live in a place where someone tortures you and cuts your head off and does other things they did in Rwanda, every experience that any being has is the fruit of their past actions.
So all Tibetans did negative things in a period.
If you have an experience that's called suffering, you have to deduce that logically. Of course you do. It's very simple. Of course. It's because because we have views that are so absolutely opposite to this. God made us. Mummy and Daddy made us. No such thing as Robina or Rwandan before they were conceived. Bad things shouldn't happen. It is outrageous. It is unfair. How dare then we find someone to go and drop a bomb on because we think it's terrible. Of course, I understand. But this is a different way to see something. But you see, if you extract all the blame, all the guilt, all that kind of stuff from it, we're talking just a technical point. It's a technical thing. What causes experiences? Buddha's saying every single living being's mind is a beginningless continuity. Every single experience you have, whether it's called happiness or suffering, is the fruit of your past actions. Intellectually, it's a really simple concept. Listen, emptiness is a hard concept to get. You've got to really squeeze your brains to get it. Karma is a very simple concept. A 5-year-old could repeat it to you. But because it's absolutely against the grain of any philosophy, including most religious ones, it's difficult for us to hear it emotionally, that's all. That we are responsible for all our happiness and all our suffering. That's an interesting point. I agree. I totally agree. This is Buddha's view. And it's the basis of compassion. Because, normally when you hear this, okay, we'll go into it later. That's okay. So the answer is, you know the answer. Someone else. A couple more questions. Then we'll talk about karma in more detail.
Our group talked a lot about the nature of mind. And I think we got stuck a little bit on some definitions. Yesterday you said mind is equivalent to consciousness.
Mind, consciousness, they use synonymously.
Same word. Mind has no beginning and end. It's of an absolute reality that survives the physical body.
Well, it's something that exists that doesn't depend, that is not just existing when there's a body. Yes,
not
that's
just
right.
existing.
That's
So,
right.
so many of us come from different backgrounds. And,
That's right.
And we'd probably equate that with something like soul or Atman.
I understand.
As far as I understand Buddhism, there's no individual aspect such as soul or Atman to the mind. So can you maybe just clarify a little bit?
I understand. We'll go that too. That's the business of emptiness, and we'll get into that gradually as well. As I've said a couple of times already, this point has come up. There's things that exist conventionally, ordinary day-to-day life, conventionally. Individual different types of phenomena. A mind, Buddha would suggest, this type of mind that's beginningless and endless, a cup, a toilet, good, bad, Hitler, Mother Teresa, Rwanda, a happy country. There's this relative reality of things. You give it a name, you define it, and on a relative level, it exists. That's that, conventionally. So from that point of view, we're positing a mind, continuity of consciousness, that isn't physical, isn't created, is beginningless, and is endless. That's a conventional phenomenon, just like a cup. Then you have the way Buddha talks about how things exist ultimately, how things exist finally, which already seems a bit abstract. And so it's there where Buddha talks about no self and no inherent nature, blah, 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 So these two don't contradict each other. Initially, it appears they do. And even as we get really advanced in our practice, these two appear contradictory. It's an astonishingly subtle point, how these two, in fact, do not contradict. Conventional and ultimate reality actually imply each other. But the way our minds are now, the Buddha says, with these misconceptions in the mind, we hear it in a contradictory, they crash into each other, you know. So that's all I want to say for now. They don't contradict in reality. It's a question of understanding that. And the fact is, they say one of the characteristics of the mind, finally, when it becomes omniscient, enlightened, seeing all, getting wisdom, finally, is that these two then appear finally as non-contradictory. So it's an extremely subtle point, finally, but it's the one that one has to work with as we go along. So we're talking conventional reality, and from that point of view, Buddha is asserting a thing called a mind that's not physical, that's beginningless and endless. But it doesn't follow, just because you assert that or assert a cup, that they exist inherently or intrinsically, which is the difficult part to get hold of, which is the business of because it exists forever. Someone else mentioned that, it was Sonia, I think. Just because it exists forever doesn't mean it's inherent or permanent. There's this. Yeah, okay, so the thing about one simple way to talk about the difference between soul and this business here of the Buddhist view of consciousness, it's not so much that it exists forever or doesn't exist, it's the way it exists. That's the difference in the philosophical approach. It's the way. So the simple words for it would be this, that what Christians or Jews or Muslims or whatever would posit as a soul, that it is necessarily something that has an inherent, intrinsic soulness nature. And that's the point that Buddha's arguing with. So he says there is consciousness, there's subtle consciousness that seems really like what soul is. But it's the way it exists. It doesn't exist intrinsically or inherently. It's a dependent phenomenon. And it's changeable. So they're just the words for it. You know, as always with all of this, it'll get unpacked as we go. Okay, good. Give her the mic. Good. Okay.
As long as we are discussing that Buddhism deals with what is the truth, what is we can understand truth as reality. We were discussing what is reality, about these two things exist as two levels of reality, as you said.
Conventional and ultimate. Yeah.
Yes, and we were just trying to understand in different points of view what is reality.
Okay. Well, yeah, so here we're talking, you know, there's the conventional level of reality. It's very straightforward. You name something, you define it, and then you have to see that it functions in that way. So within that, it exists conventionally. That's it. That's it. It's not difficult to prove something that exists conventionally. So the one about ultimate is this discussion about emptiness, and that takes more brain squeezing to get into.
But both are reality.
Well, it's a way of using the word reality. It's the term they use in Buddhism, this conventional reality, ultimate reality.
But we have to deal in our day-to-day lives with both, right?
Say that again.
In our day-to-day life, in our life.
Okay.
We cannot be only in the ultimate
No.
reality.
If the more, one of the biggest problems, especially when people get into Buddhism, we get all very kind of schizophrenic in this way, and it's all about sort of it's real, it's beyond, it's all illusion, nothing exists really, you know. No, what's like some tea, Robina? Oh no, thank you. It's all illusion. It's all ridiculous. We've got to be on the earth, and you notice that people like the Dalai Lama a lot because he's so down to earth. Now they say he's realised all this stuff. They say he is an enlightened being. I wouldn't know. They say that. He's reputed to be. So, but why he's liked so much is because he's so grounded, so ordinary. And so it's almost as if, and I see this among any of the teachers that I know, and I can only talk in this tradition because this is my thing, you know, this last few years, that any of the ones who are really considered the best teachers, the highest teachers, are just ordinary, funny, on the earth, down to earth, ordinary people. So there's something about that I find rather tasty. They're not all spaced out and cosmic and, you know, I think if you're like this, you're really off the planet, you know. You're not in touch with reality at all. And that's the biggest problem with Buddhism, because you read some of this stuff, it's pretty outrageous stuff, you know. And all the stuff about ultimate reality of illusion and all this, we can so misinterpret and really lose the plot, you know.
Yeah, but we were discussing, like, when you understand what is ultimate reality, like when you get the oneness of everything.
Yes.
You can understand also in the the other level.
Exactly. The other one?
Conventional level.
Yeah, that's the point. That is the point. So the more you work on these two parts of yourself, the more you work on understanding how things exist, ultimately, the more it grounds you and you deal with life as it is.
They
Yes.
are the same thing.
That's exactly right. Finally, they are the same thing. Finally, they are the same. But to our deluded minds, they appear like completely opposite. And that's why they talk a lot in Buddhism about the middle way. Okay, it's interpreted a lot in ways, but the real middle way is when you finally can see, and that's the highest state, that these are non-contradictory. They mean the same thing. But to the normal mind, we have the two extreme views, Buddha says. When we hear about emptiness, we go, oh, nothing exists, it's all nihilistic, and we chuck the baby out with the bathwater. When we hear about dependent arising or relative reality, we get all too concrete. So we either are too concrete or we're too cosmic, you know? So we have to bring these two together. And that's very much the skill of practicing wisely, this stuff, you know? Yeah, very good.
Thank you.
I think... Okay, that'll do. Oh, yeah, go on, Jason. Then we'll talk about karma. Look, already it's 35 minutes. I said 15. Go on.
So in our group, we got to using Hitler as a example.
Okay.
And it seemed to me that we were kind of assuming that his actions in his life were
Negative.
a result of his karma, his previous karma, or that like what he had done in the past was at least partially the cause of what he did in the present.
Right. So.
I almost like inside I almost screamed out like, no, that doesn't make sense because that eliminates free will. But then I thought, well, there should be an influence on the past.
Okay,
so
that's something that you brought up over there. Where are you? Who brought up this point about where are you? You're moving in places. Who was it who brought up this yesterday? What's your name? Layla, you brought up this point. She brought up this point. No, this is another thing too. It's very interesting. Because... Will you finish your question?
Well, I was just going to say, what is your interpretation of the balance between past fatalism and present free
Okay,
will?
right. So this is... Yeah, okay. Okay. This is the same as Layla, the point. And again, this is a very interesting thing. It just... Because I'll say it's a misconception, that when we hear that everything that we experience, everything we do is the result of what we've done before, that seems to paralyze us into thinking, well, it's all fatalism and we don't have a choice, right? This is your point, isn't it? But, you know, well, it is. That's your point. Does this mean yes? Or does this mean no?
That's what it seems like it's saying.
Well, precisely. Okay. No, exactly. But it's in fact, it's the exact opposite. In fact, when we begin to understand karma in the way Buddha intends, it actually implies, phew, what a relief, I can change. What a relief, I have choice. Because it seems to me, at the moment, with the view that God made me, it implies I have no choice whatsoever. Because that's why we always go, I didn't ask to get born. It's not my fault. What can I do about it? Depression is part of me. It's just the way we all are. That's telling you don't have a choice. Even though we all go on about free will, it's like a joke. The way we are now with ego is we are paralyzed, thinking we have no choice at all. So the one of karma, because it's what I did in the past that causes me to be who I am, I know that what I do now can cause me to have what I want in the future, and it's changeable. This is the point. It's the exact opposite, in fact. It's liberating, in fact.
Okay,
so it's not easy, though, because we all know. You know, have you got some habits, a few habits?
Yeah.
Bad ones that are harmful to you and others. I mean, join the club, okay? But you can see how difficult it is to change, can't you? You can see, you go, oh my God, here I go yet again. I can't believe I did the same thing. Because look, even mild habits, not Hitler habits, dear. Just little old mild baby Jason habits, you know. Look how hard it is to change. Because that's the interesting point. In one way, what we can see is we are this package of a bunch of habits, basically. And every single atom of your being, every bit of your personality, every bit of whatever it is even about your body is all the result of actions you have done. You're like the sculptor of Jason. And that means you're just a bunch of habits, baby. You were programmed from the second you were conceived with these particular habits that you're now manifesting. But a habit is something that's not concrete. Because if you have alongside those habits, other habits, positive ones. So I can think of my friends in prison, the classic example of a person who's got bad habits, you know. I've been working with people in prison the last 14, 15 years, whatever. And we've got some amazing people in prison. These, you know, multi-murderers, Mexican gangsters, the mafia, you know, this white supremacist boy who's got his Nazi tats, but he's now a Buddhist and his best friend is black. I mean, amazing examples of people who were stuck in a certain way, but because alongside those habits, they, like the rest of us, like us in this room, let's say, have some positive habits. And when they got all this rubbish, they were able to access those positive habits, which then caused them to struggle against the bad habits. But we can equally see that the people who've got some bad habits who can't access any virtuous habits, like the bad habits are so strong that even if you hear that killing and torturing people isn't cool, you just can't hear it. So isn't it fortunate that one has a bunch of habits that hopefully we can, you know, access the good ones, and that's the part that can make us change. Theoretically, we've all got them, but whether we can access them is the problem, you know. It depends on how deep the other habits are. And so this is why they say we're propelled. There's a saying, they say we're propelled by the force of our past karma. In the very simple way, it's true. If you're sitting here now, your fingers whizzing up and down the piano playing Bach, you can very literally say you're propelled by the force of your past practice. It's all your past practice that enables you to whiz your fingers up and down mindlessly, isn't it? Same with killing. Same with Hitler. No doubt. I mean, Hitler, obviously, I would, you know, you can suggest that Hitler must have had some past history with something spiritual. Look, he took the swastika. It's one of the most powerful Buddhist and Hindu symbols, the best meaning. But obviously, he kind of twisted it and misused his power, and then in this life it multiplied into this vast insanity called Nazism, you know. I mean, you watch that movie has anybody seen that documentary that German woman made about him? What's her name, that lady? Yeah, you can tell he's a complete peanut. He says the stupidest things. Doesn't he? He's a real idiot. He's not a very intelligent man at all. But you could see, you know, I looked at him, you looked at that film, and you watch all the people with all this adoration. It's just like having a guru. They're all this complete devotion to this man, this idiot with his foolish ideas, because these people had the similar ideas, you know, and he just spoke their truth. You can see it again and again. You can see it with good. If I look at the Dalai Lama, millions of people like him, because he speaks their truth. Well, it's a bit of a relief, isn't it? Because the truth, hopefully, is something reasonable, you know. But it's like, so clearly Hitler had some pretty powerful karma from the past to connect with a lot of people. And his ideas, he obviously had some spiritual stuff way back in the past. That's how come he came along. He was a vegetarian, for God's sake. He was all these different things that seemed to be linked to Hinduism and Buddhism. But who knows how many lives ago? But it kind of got all tangled on the way, didn't it? And then he came along in this life with this maniac, power-hungry, delusional mind, twisting it all, you know, misusing it all. I'm just raving on a bit now. But it can only be from what he did in the past. But the one thing about karma too, like a seed is very tiny. It produces masses of fruits. So it doesn't follow that the extent of the harm he did in this life is equal to the cause, because the cause is always smaller, but it grows, doesn't it? A small seed can bring many beautiful fruits. A small seed can bring many poison fruits too. So obviously the causes were way back when, and then it exploded in this manifestation of this interdependent scenario of those millions of people during the 1930s and 40s, you know. But yes, it can't be that anything that he did wasn't the result of what he did in the past. Can you possibly play piano if you haven't practiced it? It's impossible. You have to be playing the piano you've practiced. You can't just put your hands on the piano and it comes out of the sky like magic. It has to have a cause, which is your past practice. And you look in your life, there's nothing you can do, Jason, that isn't based upon the same law. Well, that's karma.
Does that mean we've done everything in the past?
Well, you could argue that, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could argue. Sorry? Okay, I'll talk about karma now. I'll answer all your questions slowly. Yep. Okay, darling. It'll all come with karma. Can we just let it be and I'll present the whole deal to you? Sweetheart, I understand. Can I just present the whole deal and it'll all slowly kind of piece together? Okay. Okay. So just to reiterate, okay? So far, we have talked about, very briefly in the context of the Four Noble Truths, Buddha's views about, you know, the third one is that we have this potential to be free of suffering. We have the potential to be full of happiness, wisdom, joy, blah, blah, blah. Another way to say that is that the nature of our mind is this purity, clarity, You know, the delusions, the suffering, the causes of suffering are not at the core of its being. We looked at what suffering is, just touched upon the labels of it, you know. We looked at the second noble truth, the causes of it, and we've touched briefly on karma and delusions, the two main causes. And we're going to go more into all that, more into all this, more into all this. And we've looked at how mind is beginningless, blah, 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 you know, not created, these things. And how So the main implication from all this stuff, it's the way I like to say it myself, is that we are our own creator. And even if anything in your life you know that you do well, what that comes with is some confidence and some appropriate pride, you know, some good self-confidence and some courage. Because you know that you did that well. You're really, you are the owner of that. You own that experience. And that is what I'm just broadly saying here, is what comes for a person who uses karma as their basis. And then is able, like that monk friend, is able to own responsibility for their experiences. That therefore, and so even, you could even argue that really working with the view of karma, philosophically speaking, thinking about it, piecing it all together, trying to understand it, that just that itself, without working on your mind, without being your own therapist, you know, without really working on a day-to-day way on the delusions and all this, but just looking at this view of karma, it already can calm the mind. It can already lessen anger and lessen attachment and lessen delusions, because they are all based upon the innocent victim. Ego, it's a really good way to talk about ego. It's the innocent victim. I didn't ask to get born. It's not fair. It's all done to me, you know. Of course, we only mean suffering there. But that comes slowly with, you know, as and when one wants to work with this and take it on board as a philosophy for oneself. I'm just talking, yeah, my own experience. So, yeah, Buddha's deal is that here it is, this universe. Okay, well, the countless types of beings, countless types of sentient beings. But we won't even go into that one yet. We even just look at us as humans. Okay, we have to bring the animals in because, you know, someone mentioned the animals. So countless types of sentient beings who, in the Buddhist view, are equal from the point of view of having a mind, which is beginningless and experiencing the fruits of their past actions, so on and so forth. And so from this point of view, okay, never mind all that one. Forget that one. I'll go into more detail about these 4 ways that karma ripens, okay? And then try and see how this links with the way the delusions work. So let me just give a really simple example of a friend of mine years ago. She was talking about her son, one of her 3 boys. He was 29 and he died scuba diving. He drowned, he was scuba diving. And the thing was, she's telling me about him because she'd heard about the teachings of karma, and she was in tears, you know, thinking about it, because he had been a fisherman all his life. So what's a fisherman? A fisherman is a person who kills fish, isn't it? That's what the word is. So let's look at it, let's explain it from the karmic point of view. So she said this little boy, she said, from the time he was very small, they lived near a river. She said the moment he saw the river, he was like magnetized. He immediately ran to fishing. It was an incredibly pleasurable experience for him. She didn't like fishing. She never went fishing. She didn't like killing creatures. So already I find this is a very interesting point, you know, when we think about karma and our parents and all this, you know. We can think of a million examples every day of people who have tendencies that aren't their parents. This is a simple little example. He was attracted to fishing. So what is it in him, if we have the karmic view, why would he be attracted to fishing, whereas the mother not attracted to fishing? From the karmic point of view, it has to be that there's a tendency, the second kind of karma is called actions similar to the cause, meaning his little personality, his tendencies. So from the time he was very small, he ran to fishing like a magnet. So that we can deduce that he had a tendency to kill, which in his case manifested as being a fisherman. Now, I have a friend on death row in Kentucky who, as my other friend, who's a Buddhist, says, who's on death row with him, says, Robina, you just can't imagine. He thinks all day about torture. I bet his mother wasn't a torturer. But his little mind is full of this tendency. So this little fisherman, okay, this little boy, there he was. If you look at the 4 kinds of karma, the first one, he was born a human. So some morality karma ripened. His little mind went to that particular American mother in California, wherever they lived, I forget, and he got a good human life. The second kind, he had many good tendencies. He was kind, he was generous, he was intelligent, he was loving. He was a very nice human being. One of his many tendencies was he would kill fish. Now, in the world, we can see this one. Most religions would say it's cool to kill. No one thinks you're some monster if you kill fish. Most people kill something. Most of us, even if we're really religious, kill mosquitoes and kill the rats and kill the cockroaches. And, some people kill fish, some people kill bears, some people kill humans. They're the naughty ones, we think. Unless, of course, if you do it in a war, then it's cool. So you have a tendency to kill, and that's the point. You want to be a soldier. You're attracted to the idea of being in an army. And then you get the job of being a sniper, and you're really good at shooting. And what's your job? Shooting as many human beings as possible. So why one person will be attracted to being a soldier and killing human beings and another one not, it's more complex, is there has to be the tendency there. So the fishing one, I remember going fishing one time to impress a boyfriend. Well, he was pulling in the fish. I couldn't get one fish, I even tried to go fishing. It didn't work. There was no karma there. And certainly, and this is a very interesting point which we never think of, this fisherman, he was a successful fisherman, meaning lots of fish came. Well, I tried to go fishing, no fish came because there were no sentient beings who had the karma to be killed by Robina. But this fisherman, this boy, he even called himself Salmon, his nickname, Sal, as in the English spelling, S-A-L-M-O-N, He was totally enamored of fishing. And like a lot of people who go fishing, it's an incredible attachment, the most profound experience. I remember reading, there was one guy I remember reading about who started going fishing. He described it almost as a cosmic experience when he first went to trout fishing, He was just completely addicted to this thing. Well, this is a very simple way to show how karma works. It's the habit. And forget the word karma, we all know about habits, You see something? So let's look at what it is in a person's mind that attracts them to one thing but not another. It has to be the habit. It has to be the habit. The habit is there. Meaning there was a tendency in this person's mind from the past to kill, and the particular way it manifested for him was to kill fish. So let's see how attachment comes into this, because that's what perpetuates our habits. So there he was. So the thing that you think about it, the thing that you run towards is obviously the thing that looks appealing, isn't it? The thing you're attracted to, the thing that magnetizes you, whether it's killing fish, torturing people, making love to somebody, eating chocolate cake, it doesn't matter what the activity is. If it looks appealing to you, that shows the presence of attachment. So the thing that you are attracted to, the thing that you run towards, is the thing you've done in the past, the thing that you've got the habit to do. It seems easy to do it. It just comes naturally. And that's the thing that appears appealing to you. That's what looks delicious to you. And that's where attachment takes over. So there's this boy with a tendency to kill. It looks good. He runs towards it. He engages in it, and it gives him a lot of pleasure. And it appears good to him. That's the way attachment works with the habit, Now, the mother didn't have a tendency to kill. So when she said she went fishing with him one time out of kindness to the boy. She, of course, would never tell him about how she didn't like killing because she respected her son to make his own choices. But she couldn't stand the thought of going fishing. But she said she remembered going one time. And she said she found it a terrible experience because what she saw was lots of flapping fish, very clearly expressing their wish. If they could speak, they would have been shouting that I would rather be in the water, please. But fish conveniently die very quietly, don't they? I mean, imagine if fish died like pigs, squealing and screaming in horror. Who would like fishing? Nobody. Get my point here? Poor little fish. They don't even have arms, No little legs, no arms. They've got to just wiggle their poor little bodies. Their eyes probably don't reflect too much. We can't see. So all she saw in the nets was flapping fish. Well, the boy, because he's got the habit to kill, he's enjoying, he's not sadistic. No one thinks a fisherman is sadistic. They don't dislike fish. They don't think they're trying to cause fish suffering, are they? He's not sadistic, like some torturer, you know. He doesn't hate fish. He even likes fish. Fishermen love fish. They go scuba diving. He used to go scuba diving. But it's attachment. He was attached to it. Because it's a habit, he ran towards it. The thing you run towards looks very nice. Because what attachment does is gives you a good feeling. It gives you a nice feeling. And we all want nice feelings. This is why the torturer likes to torture, because it gives him nice feelings. So, of course, the thing that gives you nice feelings, you want to keep doing it because you want to get nice feelings. This is how it works, you know. So the mother couldn't, all she saw was suffering fish. The boy, a kind, compassionate boy, because he had the habit to kill, because he was attached to this habit, and because it gave him good feelings, that literally blinded him from seeing the suffering fish. He couldn't see it. He literally couldn't see suffering fish. And that's the kind of subtle way that attachment causes us suffering. Let's say I'm really addicted to sex with boys and keep getting boys. Well, I'm going to do everything to seduce Jason, aren't I? You get my point? I'm going to make him feel that I think he's the most handsome guy in the whole world. But all I want to do is get him into bed. I mean, it's the usual story girls have about boys, isn't it? You know, these wretched boys who just see you as a sex object. And you think they like you. I remember. They think they like you, you know. They just want to have sex with you. Then they chuck you out. That's how attachment works. Of course you're going to be nice to the person you want to have sex with, because otherwise they're not jumping into bed with you unless you want to rape them. That's difficult. So attachment makes you, in a relationship in the beginning, if Jason and I are really attached to each other, but there's not much love, it'll just be kind of real pleasure. But after a while we'll get bored and then we'll dislike each other because there's not much love there. So you're going to do nice things to the person to get them to do, you know, and it'll appear very delicious to me. But it's just so I can get what I want. It's completely self-centered. It's not kindness at all, you know. So attachment is real. So what I'm getting at is what my attachment to Jason causes is me to think he's this handsome guy. I'm going to really be nice to him to get what I want. But I end up hurting him. I end up manipulating him. I end up misusing him. And that's what attachment causes. So I don't see Jason as a human being. I am blind to Jason. I just see what I want out of him. And that's why our relationships all turn out bad. Because if your attachment is so strong, you can't see the other person. You can't hear what they need. We're just self-centered. Attachment is complete self-centeredness. Self-obsessed. Getting what I want. That's how it functions. And so it's a honey-covered razor blade. It looks like kindness when I'm stroking Jason and being all praising of him. Not at all. It's just the way I get what I want from him, that's all. So what I'm getting at is attachment blinds you from seeing the truth in the most simple relative sense, conventional sense. So that boy couldn't see suffering. All the mother could see was suffering because she didn't have the imprint to kill and she wasn't attached to it. So you could say she could be more objective and see the naked suffering. So like, let's say a person who gets very angry. Someone else can be watching that person get very angry. Really, let's say I'm really mean to Jason again. Someone else can see how I'm harming him. But when you're in the midst of your own anger, you cannot see the harm you're doing because you're so caught up in your own nature. And that's what delusions do. In their nature, they are self-centered. In their nature, they're totally absorbed in I. To the point when they're really strong, that you simply cannot see what's in front of you. So using the torturer as an extreme example. I remember reading about one American guy, you know, who was years ago in Kansas. He called himself BTK. He was doing it for like 25 years. He was never found, you know. Bind, torture, kill. And he confessed in court. They don't have death penalty in Kansas, so he confessed to everything. And he spent just like weeks describing in detail each of his torturing and murdering of all these different people, you know. Now, I know in our mind this sounds like total, beyond disgusting. How can there be a human being this way? But if you posit the view of continuity of consciousness and you posit the view of habit, which is karma, then, and you just look at what some creatures do to each other, I'm not being mean about animals, but they are really good torturers. You know, animals are just like us. But they're 20 million times more entrenched in their habits. You know, you give a spider a dead fly, it doesn't want it. It needs to kill the fly. So we'll, you know, and this is from habit, just from habit. The spider is just the you know, a bunch of habits. A lion ripping the guts out of the buffaloes, you know, for breakfast. Remember one of those animal shows, watching it. And you see the eyes of the buffalo like vast panic and fear and horror, screaming, no doubt. Not liking to have its guts ripped out and eaten alive by the mummy lion and her babies. But they are completely blind because of their massive attachment to kill and then to eat. Yeah, of course, that's the view we have in the West. I'm giving you the Buddhist view. I'm giving you another view. I'm giving you another way to look at it. That's all, a different view, you know. That they're a bunch of habits. A lion is just a bunch of habits. And they're mainly killing and attachment. You disturb a lion, she'll eat her babies if she's a bit hungry, you know. You tell her that the buffalo doesn't like having its guts ripped out for breakfast, she can't hear you. Even the fisherman, an intelligent human being, can't hear it. You know. So lions, tigers, ants, dogs, humans, we're just these bunch of habits. And so, you know, the lion birth, let's say we use the example of when you got born, you know, how morality, the ripening of morality karma, virtuous karma, is what causes you to get a human life. Well, for a lion, for your mind to run like a magnet to a lion's womb at the time of death, after the mind leaves the body, it has to have been very powerful, habitual anger-killing habit. Could have just been of the ants, but then it multiplies strongly. Then the mind is attracted to the lion mother. The mind runs to the lion mother, and then you get this particular personality, you know. You get that personality, and you get a body that goes very nicely with it. Look at those claws. They're made for killing, aren't they? You try to rip the flesh out of your long red nails. I used to have long red nails. They broke all the time. Not good for ripping flesh out of buffaloes, that's for sure. But the lions, perfect. The vultures, perfect. Highly trained, you know, concentration, highly trained eyes, in that fish, get the fish, you know. All of these, and this is where it's very interesting, Buddhist psychology refers to all sentient beings, not just humans. Anger, attachment, love, kindness, all these. It's Buddhist psychology is referring to all sentient beings. So you could analyse a lion or a human using the same model very comfortably, which is what I'm doing here, you know, just as an idea. Tendencies, habits. So as I'm saying, you know, with, let's say, one of my friends in prison who was a white supremacist but is now a Buddhist, let's say he had alongside his tendencies to hate Jews and be a white supremacist and like Hitler, he had alongside in his mind, which during that period he hadn't accessed, were the tendencies to want to be benefit to others, to want to have compassion, to regret his harm that he's done in the past, and to develop his qualities. But when he went to prison, he got death sentence, he's on death row now, and he started reading books. And this is the common experience, the people who write to us. We get 800, 700 letters a month from people in prison. You know, and being Buddhist, you don't try to convert people. That's considered very rude, very bad manners. It's only if people write to you, you know, they write to us. So we send books. And then those who stay around with us, you know, we have a couple of hundred people around the world who function like mentors who write to people in prison. So this particular guy I'm thinking about. There's another guy I'm thinking about, a Mexican gangster who was in the mafia in the Mexican, you know, among them in Los Angeles. His life he spent raping and killing. That's what they do, Mexican gangsters. They steal as well, other things. He's now this amazing practitioner, you know. So alongside his tendency to kill, and he's killed many people, I'm quite sure, and harm people, were these other tendencies, which were there, but they didn't ripen until he got to prison, and then he started reading books, and it attracted him, and now he's, you know, like that. So we can see we have a multitude. As a human, we have many, many tendencies, which is one of the simple, in the Buddhist view, and you can see it, you know, one of the reasons why the Buddhists would say a human birth, you know, is a slightly more advantageous one. Because at least you have more options. Doesn't mean we're going to use those options. Lots of humans won't ever change because their negative habits are so strong, you know. Or they don't ever hear. Like this Mexican guy, if he didn't go to prison, he'd be keeping running on his Mexican gangster thing. But because he got to prison, he couldn't keep killing and raping, so he read books instead because he's intelligent. And that ripened this other part of him, you know, which was there but latent. Lots of people who were fishermen aren't fishermen any longer, but it doesn't follow that every fisherman will stop fishing. You can tell some fishermen that fish maybe don't like to die, they'll think you're stupid and keep fishing, you know. It depends on the person. But the tragedy of an animal's mind is that there's not much option. You're stuck with what you've got. Some animals are less harmful. You can see some animals eat, like koala bears eat eucalyptus leaves. You know, they don't rip the flesh out of buffaloes for breakfast. Some animals are quite gentle, you know. So like with humans, there are lots of personalities you can see it among animals. But the general characteristic of what, you know, in the way Buddhist psychology talks of the mind of an animal is it's a huge propensity of the delusions, to the point that any imprints of the virtues are completely suffocated, completely inaccessible to them. There are countless imprints in their minds, assuming, like us, their minds are beginningless and they've had countless lives, including good ones, but they can't access the virtuous imprints. They're only capable, as a lion or a dog, whatever, to access those particular imprints. But the one about karma too, you can, you know, how do you help an animal, therefore? The Buddhist view would be that every single thing that any sentient being sees or hears, it leaves an impression in the mind, you know, it leaves an impression. So, you know, if we have a dog, at least we try and prevent the dog, or a cat, prevent it from killing, and sort of let it be around virtue, let it be surrounded by virtue and morality. And, you know, like even hearing good things and seeing good things can leave an imprint in the mind for an animal, which can then ripen its virtuous karma when it dies, so it can get a decent life when it dies, you know. That's how they talk. So, okay, the 4 ways the karma ripens. The first one is, like I said, the type of life that you get. Human, animal, just those examples. So, in fact, there are others that Buddha talks about. You've got... they say we live in a desire realm. It's the product of attachment. We have this body, let's face it, isn't it? It's a desire thing. It's got 5 holes that demand filling, isn't it? The 5 senses, you know, they need objects. So animals are in the same one. So there's like a spectrum of possibilities of types of rebirth in this desire realm. Some that are the result mainly of virtue, and some that are a result mainly of non-virtue. The word virtue or the word positive, they're used synonymously. The word non-virtuous, negative, delusional, they're used synonymously. So they talk about, you know, the top end of samsara, if you like, of this desire realm. They talk about the God realms. And really it's equivalent to what people would call heaven. Okay, let me go back a bit here. Okay. Never mind, okay. So the God realms they talk about, where literally the physical bodies are like subtle, very subtle light energy. There's a whole way of... Okay, never mind. Then you've got human realm, and we're in that one, you know. Then you've got the animals, then you've got what they call the spirits, or hungry ghosts, sometimes they talk, and then you've got what they call the hell realms. So these last 3, they're sort of like the... Speaking psychologically, because all of this is psychological. All of this is created by the sentient beings who are having these experiences. They're not external places where you're put by somebody, you know. They're the result of your actions. Everything is the result of our actions. Being born a human, having these human experiences is the result of our actions. No one did it to us. No one made this world and then plonked us in it. Not like that. So these suffering realms of existence. You can speak psychologically speaking. The animal one is the propensity of this primordial ignorance, primordial ego grasping, this main delusion, just masses, bucket loads of this one, which has its function of just huge fear. And then on the basis of this huge attachment, huge aggression, huge pride, huge jealousy. If you use that model of the mind, you just look at a bunch of apes, how they behave. You look at the monkeys around here. You look at a bunch of dogs. You look at a bunch of humans. It's all the same. You know, you have the power struggles, you have the jealousy, you have the anger, you have the sex drive. You can see it in variations, countless variations. You can see it's the same, you know, using this simple little model. But the animal one is mainly ignorance. Then you've got these spirits, and that's mainly what they call attachment. So it's a more subtle. They're not visible to most of us. There are trillions of them, trillions and trillions around here, but one can't see them, you know. Well, some people can. And that's the propensity of attachment, of huge grasping. And then the hell realms, as they call, just like I learned when I was a Catholic, you know, is the result, is the propensity of anger, rage, harming, and is experienced as like in that way, you know. So these are all psychological states. They're all the mind experiencing something. Actually, there's very interesting ways of describing even how this can be, you know, the way they talk in Buddhist philosophy about how, but we'll go into this later. Don't worry about that. But I think the one that we can see is animals. At least those we can see, and we can look at them in this fresh point of view from this to what it is that makes a being a lion. And of course, assuming that it wasn't always a lion. Assuming the same with us, we weren't always a human. That human or animal are just the manifestation of a bunch of habits, you know. And if we understood karma really well, we would know what it was that caused us to have hands this way and feet this way and eyes this way and this personality and that look and hair this way. It's all the result of actions, you know, based upon the external condition of the parents, the genes and so on. Lions the same, dogs the same, fish the same. The second way, like I said, is to look into your personality, your tendencies. The habit, the one of habit. It's a very simple way to put it. Whether it's being good at piano, being good at killing fish, being good at being angry, being good at being intelligent. These are just tendencies in one's mind from having done them before. And we can see it from day to day, you know. And I remember since a little girl, for example, I was always... All my life, the main jobs I've done are to do with editing and books and words, you know. Well, since I was tiny, I didn't need to learn to spell. I felt like I knew spelling. I knew how to spell words. I knew where to put the commas. I knew where to put the full stops. It seemed really natural to me. Like for the little boy, salmon, killing fish was natural to him. It wasn't his only habit, obviously. I'm just using a simple example, you know. This guy who was the one who bound and tortured and killed people, he talked about how since he was a tiny boy, he was compelled to torture the creatures. And he got incredible pleasure from it. So, of course, he couldn't explain. He knew his mother didn't teach him this. He knew it was wrong. He had to keep it private. He couldn't do it in public. I mean, imagine even if you were attached to killing poodles. Oh my God, you'd be in big trouble, wouldn't you? They'd hang you. So you've got to do it in secret, don't you? But fishing, because it's acceptable in our culture, you don't have to defend yourself, you know. And it seems to me we have this huge question. Why am I like this? Why a torturer? Why Hitler? Why Mother Teresa? We have these huge questions. Why do I want to kill? Why do I want to lie? Okay, we try to find in our parents that type of habit, but it falls very short. We can see again and again examples. You know, good parents give birth to insane people. It's just so clear, you know. I mean, we could maybe talk about the genetics of, you know, or the thing of depression, how we see now that certain chemicals, and then we take a particular tablet and that calms our depression. But I mean, you know, what about anger? What about the wish to kill? How come we can't find the genes for that, you know? There's only so many genes in the body. How come we haven't found them yet? I'm not sure, you know. So all the time, the point is of this view of karma, it isn't meant just to be some interesting philosophy that you think, oh yeah, I think about karma. You've got to look at the experiential implication of it. This is the point. There's no other point otherwise. So what is the experiential implication of karma is that I'm responsible, therefore I can change. And what it does, like I said, it lessens the wish to blame. It lessens the energy of victim, of the poor me. It really does that. It really helps bring accountability. And it brings this courage to know that I am what I am because of what I've done. So that means what I do now will produce what I will be in the future. So the most basic level of practice It's in your books, actually. I don't know what page there. Look in the front and you'll see a heading. You'll see in the contents a thing called the 10 non-virtues. Yeah? The 10 non-virtues, you got that? Okay. Okay. So look, in the Buddhist, you might have seen already this Tibetan word, lam rim. Have you seen that word already in there? I think it's in there. This is just a particular another way of packaging Buddha's teachings. That's all, of packaging Buddha's teachings. 4:45. We're okay, aren't we? Yeah. People keep going out. What's the problem? You just have to go to the toilet or something, do you? Huh? Just go to the toilet. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so it's the very first level of practice in this packaging of the Buddhist teachings, which is unique to Tibet, that developed from about the 11th century. And it's called the lam rim. It literally means path graded. Well, it's a cute phrase for the word course. We use the word course in our culture. You go to learn music, you go to a music course. You start at grade 1 and you graduate, don't you? It's a gradual path. It's a graded path. It's a cute phrase. That's all it means, though. It's a course. So the lam rim is just a way of packaging Buddha's teachings. And it's packaged in terms of difficulty, of simple and difficult. It's graded, like all courses would be. So the very first level of practice, like I'm calling it junior school, you mainly you don't even think about the mind. This high school, we're doing the both together. But junior school is you mainly are concerned with karma, thinking about your actions and karma. And so the very minimal level of practice is you try to abide by the 10. You try to avoid these 10 non-virtuous actions. The first of the body, then of the speech, and then just the beginnings of controlling your mind. Not very much, the last 3, And so the main thing is your behaviour. You don't worry too much about your mind. You try to control the behaviour. But it's in the context of the view of karma. So let's say that fisherman could see in his mind he had a tendency to kill, And then he'd heard about the Buddha's teachings, and he thought about killing. Well, is killing a good thing to do? And I see here that Buddha says don't kill anything, even including fish, I mean, the guy might have been a good Christian, but, for the Christians, it's cool to kill fish. Well, not all Christians. I'm just saying, Jesus Christ doesn't say don't kill fish, because they don't have a soul, you see. But let's say this boy hears about not to kill fish. So the first thing you need to do is you need to think, well, why not? Why is killing a negative action? So let's look into this. Let's look at what it is that makes something negative. And then let's look into how karma works, One way of looking at how it works. What are the factors involved when we do an action? So I think a really interesting point here, if I'm a Christian, let's say, which I was, then it's true that what a negative action is. I asked actually was in prison. A Catholic priest was in prison, in the sex offenders unit. And I remember he was a very nice man. So we talked about these things, And I asked him, what is a sin? How do you define a sin? And this is, again, the major difference between a religion that has a creator and one that doesn't, like Buddhism. This is a huge difference. So he said, it's that which goes against the will of God, which is reasonable if there's a creator. It's reasonable. If God made me and the whole world, then he can run the show. He's the boss, right? And he has his laws. And his laws need to be obeyed. That's a very reasonable model, if that's the one you want to live by. And it fits. It fits. So doing a bad thing is doing what God says you shouldn't. Now, if we look at this, even if we're not a Christian or a Jew, that's the view we already have, but with our mummy, isn't it? Mummy said I shouldn't do it. That's why we try to get away with things, because what we think a bad thing is what mummy says we shouldn't do. Well, the Buddha says, it's not like that. For the Buddha, a negative action is defined as something that harms another. It's real simple. It's very simple. And you just do your market research. You check how dogs feel when you kick them. You check how a person feels when they're stolen from. You check if a person likes to be killed. All sentient beings don't like being harmed. It's a good enough logical reason to decide, therefore, killing is not good. It's not because Buddha said so. He's just the messenger. Like I said, it's like the doctor that says don't smoke. He's not going to punish you with cancer when you smoke. He's simply the messenger pointing out that the consequence to you, that smoking isn't good because it'll bring suffering. So that's what all Buddha's doing. So he's saying, don't kill. Why not? Well, guess what? People don't like getting killed. Don't steal. And no sexual misconduct. They're the 3 of the body. 4 of the speech, just very generally. Don't say things that aren't true. It confuses people. Don't lie. Don't badmouth people. Say harsh words. It's not helpful to people. It hurts them. Don't talk bad things behind backs. It causes division. So much of this, we do so much of this one. And then simply, merely don't gossip. Just rabbiting on about nothing, wasting your energy. Which doesn't mean you can't have a fun talk about the weather. Don't get all fundamentalist about it. But just useless rubbish, wasting your speech. Then there are the last 3 are the beginnings of working on your mind. But let's not worry about those for a minute. So the point I'm trying to make here is defining what is a negative action. It's a simple one. It's that which harms another. It's a very simple reasoning. It's a very good reasoning, It's not because Buddha says so. And that's fine. I mean, when I was a little girl, my mother probably said to me, don't go near the fire because she knows it'll harm me. But probably I would say, why not? And she probably would say, because I say so. Well, when you're a little girl, it works. You need that kind of discipline, don't you? But if now, at the age of 66, I still don't go near the fire because Mummy said so, you'd feel very sorry for me, wouldn't you? I clearly haven't grown up yet, I haven't discovered the real reason not to go near the fire is because it will hurt me. It's a very logical kind of reasoning. It's a very reasonable reasoning. Not because somebody said so. There's nothing like that in Buddhism because Buddha's not a creator. And so this brings us then to understand the evolution of an action called killing. What is it when we do the action called killing? Why is everybody leaving? Is there some problem? Have you all got diarrhea or something? You just want to go to the toilet or have a break or something? Okay, darling, it's all right. You're very welcome, but maybe we need a break. Maybe. What? Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay. Okay. So you got my point so far about what a negative action is? Do you make sense what I'm saying? It's a really important point, actually. And it causes you to be more grown up about it. Because you can see in our minds, we have this very deep instinct to feel guilty and to hide, to do things without being, not to be caught doing things. Because it's like this children's mind in us. As long as someone doesn't see what we do, it's okay. We get away with it. And so one of the points here, that the Buddhist point, and it's a very mature attitude, actually, it's, the Buddha's saying at the very beginning, don't kill. So what defines killing is an action that harms another. But why would he tell you, the only reason he's saying to you not to kill it isn't because it harms another. That's what defines it as bad. But the reason at the junior school level of practice, he tells you not to do it. He suggests you don't do it. It's for your own sake. It's for your own sake. It's defined as bad because it harms others. But he says don't do it because if I kill, then I'm developing the habit to kill and I'm harming myself. So the most basic level of karma that this philosophy brings into a person's life is this sense of accountability. That, in other words, every single thing I do and say and think brings consequences to me. This is a huge point. And it really is like an adult thing. Instead of being the child that as long as I get away with it, as long as someone doesn't see me, it doesn't matter. That's really childish. But this very basic idea of karma, it is that whatever I do leaves that imprint in me. That imprint in me. And that will deepen my tendency to do it. We can see this. You keep practicing piano, you keep getting better at it. If you keep killing, you're going to keep getting better at it. And that can only harm you. It can only harm you. It blinds you to seeing that others are suffering. You're attached to doing this harming, and then it increases in the future as a habit to kill, and then it gets the result of being killed. in the future, and then it also brings the result of getting born in the lower realms, you know. This is the main way your killing will ripen. It'll multiply and cause you to run like a magnet into a lion mummy's body, and you'll really do your killing very well then, because you created the cause to kill. You perfected it by being born as a lion, you know. This is how karma works, they say. So the main reason right at the beginning of practice to control your body and speech is because it's for your own sake. The reason killing is not good is because it harms others. That's cool. But the main motivation at the beginning is for your own sake. It's like compassion for yourself. And that is this sense of accountability, that what I do brings consequences to me. Now, this is not rocket science. We all know this in our daily life. That's why we try to eat good food. We do this in ordinary daily things when it comes to the physical. You know, if you play the piano, you know that if you don't play it properly, you won't become a proper pianist. So you want to learn the proper piano. You want to do it properly. Whether your teacher sees you or not is not the point, because you know naturally that whatever you do on the piano brings consequences to you. It's just sort of logical, you know. You know that if you go to the gym, you get a beautiful body. If you eat good food, you get healthy. So we have this awareness of that what we do brings consequences to us. But when it comes to morality, we're like babies. We think it's everybody else's fault and it's not fair, and as long as someone doesn't see me, and God said, and who does God think he is, I'm going to do what I like, you know. We have no sense that what we do in our mind and our bodies with this type of thing, that it has any impact upon us. And this is the first big point to get. And it really, like I'm saying, it kind of really gets us to be more accountable, more grown up. We are the boss. Whether somebody sees you lie is not the point. Whether somebody sees you steal or kill is completely irrelevant. It will bring consequences to me. So that's why we have to look into, unpack this idea of killing, lying, stealing. What is it about it that is something that will harm me? Me, forget the other person now. And I think we can see it. We can see. You look into your mind when you lie, when you steal, when you're angry. We know they're all distorted and disharmonious, and they're painful and they're twisted, and it's just confusion, you know, causes confusion in me and causes confusion in my relationships. It's really clear. We can see it. You know. So this first level of practice is really, like I said yesterday, I think, last night, it brings a sense of loving yourself, or a sense of self-respect. That's the basis of abiding by the laws of karma, not some guilty child, you know, doing what someone said because I shouldn't kill. That's childish. It's because you have self-respect. So let's look a little bit at how it has evolved. What is it behind killing and lying and stealing, let's say, that caused them to be negative? Yes, we can see fairly easily that killing harms another. But let's unpack the way we create karma. There's a way of looking at this. And so in other words, let's take a simple example of killing. In order for any action of killing that I do to leave a seed in my mind that will then ripen in the future as what they call the throwing karma, the karma that is the most prevalent one in my actions, that ripens at the time of my death, that then causes me to get a particular life, in this case, a suffering life, you know. There need to be 4 things in place when I do that action. The first one is intention to do it. The intention, the mind engaging in the intention to do it. This is huge. In fact, the word intention, when you study the Buddhist psychology, the word intention is synonymous with the word karma, action. It's the mind, because mind is absolutely central in Buddhism. The mind runs the show. Everything comes down to the mind. Intention to do it. The next thing has to be, there should be the object, let's say the ant on my kitchen sink. The intention to kill, the ant is there. The next one is the action, I do the action. The next one is the result, the ant dies. Intention, object, action, result. These are 4 things in place. That's a complete action. So the virtuous action is the same, you know. Generosity, the intention, the object, Jason, the action, giving the $100, the result, you know, pleasure when he gets my $100. So let's look at the killing one, and let's look at the role of intention, but more than just that. Under the heading of intention, there are several factors, one in particular that plays the most crucial role in determining the quality of that action you do. So in general, at this very first level of practice, you merely decide, I won't kill. There's no drama. You don't try to unpack it. You just try to control yourself and not kill, at least to protect yourself from developing that bad habit. And yes, indeed, the ants and the fish will cheer because they get a life, because you'll leave them in peace. But if we look at it in more detail, we're going to see under intention, there's always a reason for killing, a motivation. The motivation is central, absolutely central. And I'll use different examples to show how completely different actions will be. So let's say, I keep using Jason. Well, this is fine. Jason, he's right there. What can I do? So let's say I've got an ant on my kitchen sink, and let's say he's got one on his. And who else is there? I don't know. What's your name? Kieran. You sound like I can't tell whether you're an American or Australian yet. I said it Australian. You're an American. Kieran. Okay, Kieran. Kieran is Australian. Kieran is American. Okay. Never mind. So there's Kieran, there's Jason. So let's say I've got an ant on my kitchen sink. I see the ant and I have an intention to kill it. Now, think about this. You wouldn't have an intention to kill just because, oh, well, why not? There's going to be a reason, a very strong reason. And this is what makes killing bad. This is what made killing over the eons of time. This is why it is a bad action. What is the motivation to kill? Normally, it's aversion or hatred or anger, isn't it? I can't stand ants. How dare that ant be on my kitchen sink? So an intention absolutely comes along with a reason. In fact, they're so linked, we don't separate them. But intention and motivation are separate things, and we really need to unpack it like this. But the usual reason we can see that most people kill ants, have wars, Okay, fishing is different. That's attachment. Like I said, the fishermen don't hate the fish. They kill because it's attachment to that action, Not even necessarily attachment to the flesh. It's come from that one, the attachment to food and stuff like this, that we've developed this habit to kill animals to eat them. That's not aversion. But the one of harming others, the killing that we consider so bad, like the murdering and the killing in wars and the way people harm each other, it's really obvious the motivation is anger. It's just so clear. The mosquito. It's so automatic we don't even think, oh, mosquito. Oh. It's not because you love the thing, it's because you don't love it. That's the point. That's why you want to kill it. How dare it take my one drop of blood, It mightn't be the same level of aversion as dropping a bomb on somebody, I agree, but it's aversion. It's anger, but a small level, So this intention is crucial. Now let's say, Kieran has an ant on his kitchen sink. But let's say he sees the ant and he can see that it's got its little legs mangled, it's harmed. And he'll have compassion. He'll go, oh, the poor little ant. Look at it, it's suffering. Then he'll go, I must kill it to stop its suffering, which is a common one we have. Let's look at this. Now, as far as two people, another person looking at me and Kieran, they mightn't see much difference. Kieran's at the kitchen sink, I'm at the kitchen sink. I see an ant, I kill it. I probably won't make a big fuss because you don't talk with real anger about an ant, but in my mind there is aversion that propels me to turn the tap on. I do the action, I see the ant go down, and I'm glad. All in a second, so automatic. He, same, but look at the difference. He wants to help the ant. What's in his mind is the intention, yeah, but intention is just bare bones. What gives it its flesh, what gives it its meat, what gives it its energy is the reason to kill. And we can see with him, it's because he has compassion for the ant. He can see it suffering, he has compassion, and he wants to stop its suffering. So he turns the tap on, he sees the ant go down, and he's pleased as well. But look at the difference. Externally, the identical actions, aren't they? Internally, you can say, I create negative karma of killing, and will create the cause if I don't purify it to get born in the lower realms, be killed and blah, 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 because it'll all just manifest more and bigger in the future. He actually didn't create negative karma. He created good karma. Even though the ant suffered, even though the ant died, and even though the ant might even go to another ant body. He didn't stop its suffering at all. He just gave it another ant body. That's a whole other discussion. We can talk about that, this whole business of euthanasia, you know. But his motivation, even if it was misguided, his heart was full of compassion. Mine was full of aversion, wish to harm. He wanted to help. So that's the karma he created. So karma's not a stuck thing that a judge will decide upon or that exists in and of itself as good or bad. Not true. So even though killing harms a sentient being, and even though the ant might have even suffered when it died, and even though the ant might even get a worse rebirth, because Jason's motivation was pure, you could argue he created good karma. Okay, there are many, many other factors involved. I'm giving simple examples and really showing the power of the mind and how that plays the main role. Now we've got Jason. He has an ant on his kitchen sink, but he doesn't even see it. He doesn't even know there's an ant there. So there's no intention, is there? So therefore there can't be a motivation. He's just washing his lettuce, you know, thinking about the moon or something. But he turns the tap on, the ant goes down, and the ant dies. Well, you can argue, depending on many other factors, that he doesn't create any karma. There's no intention. Simple speaking, there's many variations of all of this because many other factors play a role. But what I'm trying to point out here is the absolutely central role of mind, intention, and, crucially, motivation. Now, you could have another person who hates ants, just far worse than I do, and sees an ant and wants to viciously torture it, but the ant gets away. You could even argue because the heaviness of their negative, they create the negative karma, strongly poisoning their own mind, even though the ant lives, you know. You could even argue that. So in general, you can argue, don't kill because it harms sentient beings. And second, don't kill mostly because the beginning stages, you know, because it's going to harm you, because you will get killed. You will be harmed, and you don't want to suffer. You're sick of suffering. But then this is a way of looking at it in more detail, and then looking at the evolution of killing. How come it's become bad? Not because God said so, not because it's bad in its nature, because it's made up of various factors. It's made up of a mind, a person with anger, a person not getting what they want, a person then wanting to harm that person who prevents them. And that's how come killing has come about. It's coming from ego, coming from attachment, coming from anger, you know. So in its nature, it's neither good nor bad. You can argue that. Because you can see it depends on the motivation. There's even this story, this is a kind of a famous story, that they talk about the Buddha in one of his past lives. He wasn't yet a Buddha, he wasn't fully enlightened, he was a bodhisattva. The word Buddha, you know, like I mentioned the meaning of it, but it also has the meaning of fully awake. And so the word Buddha, bodhisattva, an awakening person, sattva, person. It's a person who's on the path, but not yet fully there, you know, but well and truly qualified. So one of the past lives of the Buddha, he was a captain on a boat or something, a boat of merchants, 500 merchants. And the deal is, the story goes that, you know, already highly evolved, meaning he was clairvoyant, he could see the minds of others very clearly. He had enormous compassion, bodhicitta, this amazing aspiration to benefit others. He had enormous wisdom. He was a highly realized being, you know, could see the mind very clearly of one of these other merchants, and he could see that he planned to kill everybody and take everything for himself. The story goes that the captain, the bodhisattva, had enormous compassion for this guy because he could see the consequences to this guy of doing that action, killing everybody, countless lives in the lower realms, enormous suffering, and his compassion for him. Forget about the other 499 people. He had huge compassion for the person who was going to kill. So he thought, rather me than him. I'd rather go to the lower realms. So he killed him to prevent him from killing the others. So they say that because of his huge compassionate motivation, and this is a motivation not like Kieran and the ant, which was maybe a misguided action, and we can talk about that, but this one was, you know, based upon wisdom, that he could see what this guy was going to do. He had compassion for this guy. So yes, of course, the guy wasn't happy to get killed, but at least he prevented him from having terrible suffering in the future. This is the way they talk about it. And so the person is the Buddha's action based upon compassion and wisdom even though it was killing and it looked bad, if you were sitting on that boat, believe me, you wouldn't see some guy with a halo killing somebody. You just see this crazy captain killing somebody, you know. But assuming it's true, that he had this wisdom and this compassion, then they say that that action of that huge wish to take upon himself any suffering, rather me than him, actually increased his, kind of hastened his own enlightenment, you know. So what I'm getting at here is depending on the motivation. And not just kidding yourself, oh, well, Hitler meant well. Wasn't it a good action? Not like that. You can fool yourself completely. We're talking in reality a pure motivation, not pretending, you know. And again, it doesn't need a judge to decide. It itself will decide. So let's say Kieran pretends he's got compassion for an ant just to prove to me what a nice guy he is, but he really hates ants. Well, I don't care what he pretends. What's happening in his mind will determine the karma he creates. Doesn't matter what he says. Karma takes care, as Lama Yeshe puts it. Another factor that plays a major role in the karma we create is whether or not it's a habit, how strong the habit is. So with the mosquito, it's clear, isn't it, that it's so habitual. The little tiny sentient being comes who wants to take just one tiny, tiny drop of your blood, as Lama Zopa says. But look at the aversion we have, the horror, you know. Just as hard as we can, smash. That's called aversion. That's not called attachment. There's attachment to your own flesh, aversion for the mosquito. But you don't do much thinking and analysing, will I kill it, won't I kill it? Just boom, even without even thinking about it. It's automatic, you know. And much of the killing we do in the world, killing the rats, killing the mice, killing the ants, killing the cockroaches, it's pretty spontaneous. No one has a big drama about it, you know. Of course you kill the cockroaches, we think. We don't think twice about it. Poodles, yes. Rats, no. So the habit to do it, that even if you don't, and that's, so okay, another example, let's say Jason's a fisherman and he kills the rats and kills the roaches and all this. He just likes killing. Nice guy, you know, perfectly fine person. But, you know, lots of people kill, we can see. So let's say he's a habitual killer like this and he kills the ant without realizing. You could argue there because he's got the habit to kill, that would be negative karma, even though there's no intention. There's so many factors involved. But the main reason I'm giving these three examples is to try and show the absolutely central role of the mind. And then secondly, how you can unpack intention into intention and motivation. That all intentions always come with a reason, unless you're completely crazy. Even my intention to walk out the door, there's always a reason behind it. It might be to kill you, or it might be to go to my room. You know? Walking out a door is neither here nor there. Depends on your motivation. Everything. And that's very much the Mahayana, the compassion wing approach to things. It's everything to do with your motivation. That's what gives the shape to the karma we create, the shape to the actions we do. In other words, you know, if you look at the list of 10 don'ts, it says don't lie. But what we call a white lie, well, it depends on your motivation. Let's say, you know, Kieran lies to me because he can see I want to really harm Jason and I'm really deluded. So he says to me, because he knows I want to harm Jason, so he tells me that Jason went this way instead of that way. It's a lie. Very simple. But look at his motivation. To protect me from harming and to protect Jason from me harming him. So that's a good action. It's a positive action. But of course we can delude ourselves. We do all the time. We believe our own ridiculous propaganda all the time, you know. So any questions about all that? Yeah, go on. 17, 5. Wait, on what time do we have to stop? I'm confused.
So,
4, 6, 3, okay, fine. Yeah.
How about a farmer that
Where are you?
has this crop and
Yeah.
he plants for the benefit of beings and then he uses pesticide to...
Yeah, of course. All of this is called killing, isn't it?
So, how does it go?
But that's the trouble, isn't it? This is how we can see. It's not an easy point. It's really difficult. You know, due to his karma, he got born into a scenario where he chose to be a farmer. And then what farmers do is they kill creatures. So it's difficult. Due to his own karma, he got born to be a farmer, you know, not to be a goldsmith or something. So it's not easy. It's quite complicated, isn't it? And you can't tell a person not to do it. We're just objectively trying to look at the different scenarios, isn't it?
Yeah, because we need this food as well.
I understand.
Or even if it doesn't use pesticide, he has to.
Yep, I believe you. I understand. I understand. I understand. But this is what we have to do. Each one of us individually look at all this and be accountable for our decisions we make. We have to. No choice. It's not easy. I agree. All we can do is think about these things. Or not. Because the simple point is every action we do brings results to us. That's why we have to analyse every action, look at every one, see what it is, see what's behind it. And it's not always easy. It's not always easy. But we have no choice. Yes. Put the mic to the guy behind. Yeah.
In a related question, questions about food. So it seems to me that plants are sentient, like they struggle for life just as much as any animal. So how do Buddhists justify eating them?
According to the Buddhist view, what is called a plant is not a mind possessor. It's a living thing. Billions of living little mind possessors live on it, no doubt, including spirits and all sorts of beings live around the carrot. But the thing that's called a carrot, or the thing that's called a table, or a rose, they would not be considered to be a mind possessor, a sentient being. So we have to find that out,
And also, so it seems like eating carrion would be okay karmically.
What? Who?
Like eating carrion, eating a dead animal.
Okay,
so
it all
someone
depends.
Else killed it.
Eating flesh in itself, let's analyse it. What's the intention of that action? What's the intention? Eating flesh, eating a meal, right? There's no intention to kill, is there? But you've got to look at the conditions. If you went off and said to someone, please kill that goat, that's a killing action. And then the extra, and why? Because you're attached to the flesh. So the eating the flesh itself is not a particularly bad action, but it's the connection to the killing, isn't it? So in general, the Buddhist view would be the closer to the action you are, the more intense the karma, whether it's good or bad, So, and this is not easy because look at the world now. The meat industry is so complicated and it's so kind of global that the piece of lamb that you're going to eat today was a little sheep in New Zealand 12 months ago. So to stop eating that lamb's flesh, it probably won't impact on the meat-eating industry because it's so complicated now. Whereas if you're in a little village, one person not eating meat could save the life of one goat. So just because it doesn't affect it doesn't mean we shouldn't stop eating meat. It's probably a good thing to do, don't eat meat, But then the Buddhist view too is don't forget all the other sentient beings. Look at all the organic gardeners. They might be the best organic gardeners in the whole world, but no, sorry, that's not the point. Look at even when we eat ordinary vegetables. All the little creatures that die. Look, he just said, the spray. When you dig the little creatures, when you harvest it, when you drive it to the vegetable shop, we drive over all the creatures on the road if it's in the middle of summer, all the smashing ones into the creatures into the windscreen. All the creatures that die even for vegetables, So the point the Buddha's making is, he says everything is in the nature of suffering in this realm of existence that we live in this sense that no matter what we do, we harm sentient beings. Our very presence harms others. Breathing harms others. If we had a microscope in our bodies, we can see like a little walking zoo. Under your armpit, you can't imagine, it's like a zoo under there. Your little clean armpit. No matter what we do, we harm sentient beings. So at least we can attempt to not harm the sentient beings that we meet. At least this much. And then have this intention, this wish not to harm. This can become like a beacon that guides our actions in life. At least we can do this. To say that I won't ever harm a sentient being is not true. Just existing harms sentient beings. Because the Buddha would say there's not an atom of space where you won't find sentient beings. There's not an atom of space that isn't pervaded by sentient beings. So that carrot, even though itself is not a mind possessor, billions of sentient beings are living in it that we can't even see. So just eating the carrot, you're eating sentient beings. You can't help it. Drinking water, I bet you're drinking sentient beings. On the television, they show all those ads of all the ugly-looking creatures in the dust and in the mattresses to make you want to go and buy their sprays. It fills you with disgust. It looks like horrible, violent creatures. But they're miniature. You can't even see them. But they're everywhere. Sentient beings are everywhere. And just existing So at least we have the intention to try not to harm them. And this is what's so powerful. Do their best, you know. So sometimes for some people, eat meat is cool. Some other situation, no, you know. Depends on the person. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay. Am I going to fall off? Which edge? Oh, no, it's several inches already. It's cool. At least 4 inches. Okay. I live close to the edge. Eh? Thank you very much. How kind you are. So, go on, Kieran.
I'm just wondering, is karma always a direct correlation between the person who has acted upon and what they have done in the past? Or does it ever happen that somebody pays for another
I understand,
person's
yeah.
karma?
No, I think it gets incredibly complicated, you know. But in general, you could say among us and the people we meet and our parents, karma's personal. There's no, pretty much, I mean, I've heard the lamas talk in different ways about this, and all we can do is think about it and try to analyze it and come up with the answer. But it seems to me, let's say you and I meet. You know, you see it happen all the time. You meet a person and instantly you fall in love. Instantly, even just hearing their name, you know this is the guy you're going to marry. I've heard so many people tell this story. That's a typical example of a really close connection from the past life. Like you pick up where you left off, you know? And it can happen with enemies too. I remember hearing the name of one person. He was 12,000 miles away that I was going to work with in a particular job. I hated his guts. Just hearing his name, I knew I couldn't stand him, you know. It was so strong, I tell you. The one of parents and children, that's a very powerful karmic connection. That it's not random that when you passed in the last life that you ran to this mother's womb. It wasn't like you go, oh, she looks nice. You just were magnetized to that mother. You've got a strong history with that mother. So in many types of very strong experiences like this, it's very, very personal. So in other words, if you know, and even what seems random sometimes, like Jason punching me in the nose, this crazy guy walking down the street, he doesn't like the look of me, he punches me in the nose, I've never met him before. You could argue that's pretty personal. Although he doesn't remember, I don't remember. That's what brings us together. That's what draws us together. Past history with each other. All the people harmed by Hitler had a very strong history with Hitler. No way you could get born a Jew in Germany in the 1930s and not have a strong history with the Nazis. Strong personal history with those people. I remember one time, in 2003, Richard Gere, you know, he's Buddhist, he was in New York, and he invited the Dalai Lama to teach. And he also invited, at the time, a bunch of ex-prisoners, about 20 of them, different Americans, you know, some black and white and Puerto Rican, Mexican, whatever. All these people who'd done some kind of meditation in prison. And then a few people like me who worked with people in prison. We all met together, right? And I remember so it was very interesting, very moving to listen to their stories and all their dramas and everything. But then the thing was, and they also met the Dalai Lama, but they had also invited a couple of young Tibetan nuns, like young, in the early 20s, who'd been imprisoned in Tibet for a couple of years, just for being Buddhist nuns, and who were tortured and sexually abused for that period, you know. And they were telling their story. And I remember they were like in tears. But it was very clear, first of all, it was very clear to everybody listening that their suffering was more than everybody else's put together. But what was really clear, and this is the business about karma I'm getting to, what was really clear to everybody was they were not angry. You know, when you listen to people who have been really, and I'm not criticizing here, it's just showing the one of karma as a living thing for somebody in their life, you know. I'm getting to the point. You listen to, you know, somebody who's been a victim, who's been tortured or raped. I mean, the torture, the suffering is immense, isn't it? And then the main reason, much of what's behind why we suffer is this kind of, why did it happen? Why is it happening? Much of our suffering is because we can't find a reason. You understand my point? It brings so much pain and fear and anguish and then rage and all of this. But it seems very reasonable to us, because who likes to be tortured? Nobody. But if you look at it carefully, when I'm telling you the nun's response, you can see that that's the response you'd have if you thought that God made you. I'm not being rude to people who believe God made them. Or you think your mummy made you. Meaning there's no continuity to you, there's no history, there's no past, because you can't see a reason. And I agree. If you are really made by your parents and Buddha's an idiot and doesn't know what he's talking about, then there's no reason why you should get raped. There is no logical reason why you should be tortured. These nuns did nothing to these torturers in this life. So the point was, they weren't angry. They weren't in anguish. And as they said, and we had compassion for our torturers because we knew we had harmed them in the past. Now, you could say that's just a story they made up. Well, then I think even good enough. If the story you make up and you believe helps you suffer less, well, hey, honey, go for it, you know. But that's the view they have. That's the way they think about karma. And that's the experiential result of having the philosophy of karma. And that's the one of how they said this is a very personal relationship, you know. Because if you think about people you really hate, it's almost as if you're attached to them, isn't it? You think about them all the time. You're dying to fight with them. You can't keep away from them. You might as well be attached to them. Because what is it that pulls us to those particular people? It's like an energy that brings us together, isn't it? Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the way karma works. Very strong connection between people, whether it's attachment or aversion. Same kind of thing. There's a history there. And then you don't even know why you're compelled to harm this person. You don't even know why you get so angry. That's why sometimes in some relationships you have to leave the guy because you don't know why you get so angry. You don't know why you get so upset because there's a strong history between you. That's how they talk about karma. Go on. What?
And so as far as, I was returning to the question back here about, the Rwandan genocide or the Tibetans.
Yes.
Is that to say that karmically all those people who have karma that needs...
As a group.
Group
karma, collective karma. Yeah,
collective karma has placed them all.
Yeah,
in
get
this
born in the
country
same
at
place.
this
Yes,
time.
sure. Very. Look at us. We do things in groups. You know, look. There's a group in this room, isn't it? We're going to be here together, assuming some of you don't leave early, for at least 10 days. That's a very powerful connection we're creating with each other. Huge. Look at it, and look at the quality of what. We're not here talking about guns. We're not here discussing mathematics. So we're discussing this stuff, you know. We might never meet again as a group. We won't ever meet again as this group in this life. But we can deduce that we have come together a long time past on this topic in the past that has driven us together seemingly randomly, like the people on September 11. Seemingly randomly, that particular group got fried, you know. It's not, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm really not trying to be mean. I might sound a bit shocking, I know. Get my point. Hang on a tick. Karma takes care. You know, it's a bit like, you know, if you can just see this, you know, sometimes, excuse me, if you just see a small part of a whole event, if you walk in the middle of a certain event and you don't see the whole picture, you have a very wrong view about what's happening, don't you? You've got to see the whole picture. So all I'm suggesting here is, all I'm saying is that Buddha's saying the big picture is the one of karma. And that's why we come together in groups. That's why a particular group live in a lovely country with harmonious elements and pleasant, you know, nice little buildings and clean and neat and have comfortable lives. It's not a random event. You get born due to your karma, and you have a collective karma with that group from having done similar things in the past. So you could say, you know, at the moment, lots of Mexican gangsters in Los Angeles. Well, half of them in prison now, all over the country. But so if you have a certain kind of mind, you know, and due to karma, you get born as a human, but your mind runs like a magnet to a Mexican mummy in Los Angeles, where you can carry on doing your job, you know. But it's labelled this life Mexican gangster. It's labelled another one, depending on the karma you experience, is called Rwandan. It's called Jew in Israel. It's called, or wherever they were in Germany, you know. Whatever the thing might, or called Tibetan. They're just labels for a group of people with a particular kind of psychology that are created to cause individually and collectively to have certain experiences. Women is a group karma. We have similar karma as females, you know, to be seen certain ways by men. It's a collective karma, the result of certain actions. Men have collective karma. Black people, white people. Actually, it was very interesting when I was visiting some prisons in the States. I'd often ask the question. There was this group of people, okay, it was on the East Coast, that's right, on the East Coast, and most of them were black. And we were discussing karma. And we were looking, and one of them, he said, and he was shocked, and they all sat there, you know, he said, "You mean I could be born a white man?" And I said, "Yes." But I didn't tell him he could be born a white woman. It would have been too shocking. So that brought up for me how we identify ourselves. And this is a really good discussion, which we can have tomorrow, about how we see ourself, how we define self. And so I found, especially among these Mako guys in prison, you know, And I asked them another time, how do you define yourself? And even in the States, you can imagine, especially, you know, this in the black-white business. But they all said male, more than black. Male was even more than race. Gender was even stronger. So like this idea that he'd be born a white man, he would never have said white woman. That seemed too remote because he identified himself as a male, you know. So we'll talk about that one tomorrow, I think. Self, how we see ourselves, how we define ourself. Anyway, I'm rabbiting on here. But did that answer your question? Whatever. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, go. Time to go. Now, in a minute. Yep. Sure,
A
Dom.
lion, for instance,
Yes.
you said that us and animals and everyone, we...
What, sweetheart?
Us humans and the animals, we all kill and commit sins based on the same anger and jealousy and pride. But
Yeah, another way. That'll do. Yeah, okay. Go on.
so, how does a lion who lacks that
The virtue.
ability
Yeah.
to contemplate his actions and the way he leads his life, is a lion, for example, as a species, just
Yes.
regarded karmically
That's right.
wrong by Buddhism?
So the only way that a lion can the virtuous. Okay, in the lion's mind, like in yours, given that they're both beginningless continuities and have had countless lives, including virtuous lives. So in the lion's mind, there are millions of imprints or seeds that are latent, right? That the lion karma of aggression and following those habits, they are paramount, and they are the ones that have ripened. Just a few, not many, isn't it? And that runs the show as a lion. And the mummy lion, because she's the one I think who does the killing, she can't access those virtuous seeds that are there. So as a lion, forget it. So she's going to keep creating negative karma the more she kills. So that keeps creating the cause for more suffering lives. But gradually, kind of the karmic tracks kind of get weaker. And maybe one life eventually she'll be born as a dog to a nice Buddhist mummy, you know. So he that doesn't have to kill and has imprints of positive things, and then that can ripen the virtuous karma in that mind.
Okay.
And then the virtuous karma can ripen. But it's not easy, you know. That's what they say. It's not easy.
And I have one more question.
Yeah.
You spoke about how, for example, we should stay away from killing, because not just because it hurts the other person, but
At the beginning, okay, be more precise. What defines killing as negative is that it harms another, not because Buddha said so, first point. But
Yeah.
second point, just to make clear, at the beginning stages of practice, the main reason to stop killing is for your own sake.
But doesn't that self-compassion somewhere collide with being
Doesn't what?
Doesn't it collide with being self-centered?
No, we're talking stages of practice. Compassion is university level. We're doing the wisdom wing here. We're doing the basic level of the nuts and bolts of karma, what causes suffering to me, how to get rid of my suffering. We've got to do this first for oneself. Then we're qualified to really do it for others. Of course, we can be compassionate as well, but we've got to look in the orderly way we need to practice.
Okay.
So psychologically, the first stage is we need to develop this strong sense of recognition of my own suffering and my wish to get the hell out of suffering. You've got to have that. And then that is the basis for your genuine, stable compassion for others.
So if I don't kill another human being because I want to build up my own good karma, and if I don't kill another human being because I don't want to wrong him or end his life, is there...
And what's the last one you said? Because you don't what?
Because I don't want to end his life or wrong him or harm him in
and that's
any
called
way.
compassion. Well, that's two reasons. One is for your own
So
sake,
are
and two
they-
is for the sake of another. That's fantastic.
Are they different? Or
Yeah, of course they're different. Look at them.
Okay.
Your motivation. The first motivation is because you realize you're sick of suffering. You realize you don't want to suffer. You realize you don't want to kill. You realize you don't want to get killed. You've got to have that first. You've got to have a sense of compassion for yourself first. That's for your sake. And then you also don't do it for the sake of another. That's called compassion. Fantastic. The more the
Makes
better.
sense, yeah.
Nothing wrong. Yeah.
You mentioned you had no question that Jews had a close relationship with Hitler.
Beg your pardon, you need to repeat that.
You mentioned you had no question that Jews had a history with Hitler in the past, in a previous life. Can you model a scenario?
I mean, you don't really need to, you know. I don't think it matters so much. I just think by looking at the...
I guess I'm curious just how
No, I can imagine...
millions and millions of people and one person can
Well, it
have
wasn't
a
just
real...
one person. You see, Hitler was useless if he didn't have a bunch of Nazis to support him. And Hitler was useless if he didn't have a bunch of Jews who'd created the cause to be harmed by him. It's a very interdependent scenario. And that's the thing I think that we're not used to thinking. It sounds a bit shocking to say, that's what I said about the September 11. Those, you see, okay, let me use the September 11 example. Not so much what could have happened before, but let's look at it, okay, from this Buddhist taking this view. It would seem, you know, those pilots, you know, having their faith in God in whatever the way they thought and wanting to hurt all these infidels or whatever it is wherever they were coming from, you know, based upon what you read and all this, so let's take that as a given, that they really, they must have thought that really they were blessed by God because they were crummy pilots. They were really ridiculous pilots, you know. But look at the scenario. That was like they were geniuses. And look at the buildings. They completely collapsed into dust. It was so intense what happened. I mean, I'm guaranteed they thought it was the most biggest blessing of God of all time. But it was, you know, the Buddhist explanation of how come it happened like that and was so intense, so precise, so powerful. This sounds so shocking to our ears, I tell you. But never mind. It's a completely interdependent scenario. Those two pilots' hands were tied. They were useless if the people whom they were the victims didn't have the karma to be killed by them. You've got to hear this point. That fisherman probably thought he was such a brilliant fisherman, but he had a lot of willing fish coming running to his nets, because he had a strong connection with those fish. They created the cause by killing in the past to run to be killed by him. So his success as a fisherman depended on the fish. Well, the success of those pilots depended on those people having a strong karma from their past killing, 1,000 lives ago maybe. That this seemingly random flying into a couple of buildings had such a devastating effect that they couldn't even find remains of most of the bodies. They were just crumbled to dust. So all the people called Jews in Germany, this powerful coming together of all these players in this elaborate scenario. I'm not trying to sound cynical here. So this is the thing. On the relative level, there are victims and there are oppressors. You know, look at the list of 10 don'ts. Well, Hitler went against every one. You know, there's no question what he did and what the Nazis did is called wrong. That's a completely reasonable statement. But all karma is an explanation of how come it happened. And that's what we're all wanting to come up with. Why did it happen, we all say. So this is a very interesting view, karma. The very interesting view that posits all the minds that were there have beginningless minds and must have been an equal participant in that scenario. It's a very different view. I find it a really interesting view. I mean, obviously, I'll get excited when I talk about it, because I find this is the one that explains things to me. At least for the moment, I'm happy to work with Buddha's view. If I prove him to be wrong at some point, I'll say, see you later, Buddha. But so far, it's cool by me, you know. It seems to be intellectually even a reasonable explanation that is at least an answer. I mean, I remember, actually it was funny, it was in Florida years ago, a little half-day seminar, and there was me, a rabbi, a Lutheran minister, and a Catholic priest. And the topic was, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, actually, it could just easily have been, why do good things happen to bad people? But people always like the other way around. So anyway, the Catholic and the Lutheran, I have to be very respectful. I didn't understand their answer at all. Never mind. It was easy for me. I gave the karmic one. Well, the rabbi clapped. He said, well, that's what we think too. He was a Kabbalah rabbi. No, I didn't know this. And I tell you, most of the Jews in the audience didn't know this. They were gobsmacked when they heard that he had the view of karma. Obviously, in Hebrew, the words are different. But he basically said they have the view of reincarnation and karma. And he said his mother, she was from Israel, she never had one bad word about the Palestinians in her house. She'd chuck a person out, you know. And he cracked jokes about the Holocaust, because he had this view of karma. And he said, we have this lovely saying. He said, we have this saying, every time something bad happens, you say, good, one less debt to repay. Now, I mean, I hadn't heard that before, but that's very interesting. And now it explains to me why, when the Dalai Lama met with a bunch of rabbis years ago, he said, you people must make your views more public. Because I think it's only for 40-year-old plus men, isn't it? Maybe now girls do it. Look at, what's her name, Madonna, all these Kabbalah people now. It's becoming more popular. So it is anyway. That was interesting. That there it is. I don't know if people who are Jewish know about those views. Do you all study this stuff, you people? If you're Jewish, no. There you go. I don't know. So I just find it totally interesting. I know myself, my life. I was brought up a Catholic. Okay, I always wanted explanations. I wanted the big picture. I wanted why the world is the way it is. And so of course, I gave up being a Catholic, and then I became a bit of an old hippie, and then a communist, and then into black politics, and then a feminist, trying all these different methods. And then I bumped into these Buddhists, And all I can say is I really, for me, the Tibetan Buddhist one makes sense. I like the big view. I like the philosophical approach. I like how it's to be experiential. It suits my mind. That's why I talk about it like this. Because I find, especially in our modern contemporary culture, we're so educated. We have such excellent minds. And we ask every one of these questions. We all ask the question, why do things happen? And then all the Western scientists say with confidence, oh, well, we're working on it. We're looking on the Big Bang Theory or whatever. And then most people say with absolute confidence, well, no one knows. I find that intellectually lazy as anything. Excuse me. I like the fact that this Buddhist come along and say, yes, there's an explanation for everything, and yes, you can know it. I like that. That's great. So that's what we're talking about here, And then it's up to us. Hell, we're the boss, Think about it or not. And the one of karma is a really perfect example of interdependence. We love the idea of that everything is interdependent. But when it comes to the Jews being equal participants in the Nazi scenario, that's a different discussion. We don't want to hear that one. Or that the Tibetans, created the cause to be harmed. Or the people on September 11 created the cause to be there. That we don't like, because we're very caught up in the victim-oppressor mentality into the blame and guilt. We like that view. We're very stuck in that one. But this karmic one smashes that view completely. It's very interesting. Yeah. Give the girl the mic. This is going to get out of hand, all this discussion. We can have this till the day we finish, isn't it? It's already 20 to 6, but never mind. It's useful. Go on, Dal.
So with what we were talking about with the, the Jews, with this karmic imprint that the group karma, what we were just talking about. I'm curious about the story that you gave with the captain who is the Bodhisattva.
Yes, the previous life of the Buddha. Uh-huh.
Who killed this man. And wouldn't it be that this group of people that the man was going to kill might have had the karma?
Well, they would have had the karma, but they also had the karma to be saved from it, because it wouldn't have happened otherwise. I'm not trying to be tricky.
Okay.
You could have the karma, you and I could both get cancer, okay? Now, one of the ways that killing ripens in the present, and I haven't gone into this and I will later, one of the results of killing in the past is the experience similar to the cause. It's that we would get killed. Okay, the environmental result of killing is that the environment harms us, so we get... Okay, cancer is the result of, let's say, killing in the past. For example, there's many other things. So you and I could both get cancer. Karma the same. But we both go to the same doctor. You get cured and I don't. So clearly, the imprint of my karma was stronger, or it was further along on its track, that it was a bit late to apply the antidotes. But you going to that doctor, you also had the karma to get healed. That's how come some people can get healed and some people not. That's how come some people get killed in some situation, but others don't, Every single one, we can have there's different factors involved at different times that bring it, into play, things that happen.
So it wasn't like the captain was messing with their karma?
No, they obviously had the karma to get helped.
Okay.
You could say, yes, indeed, if you're about to fall under the car and I go to save you, I'm messing with your karma, but hey, thank you very much, Robina, I just saved your life. But that means you got the karma to be saved. I might have missed you and your car got you instead. So nothing wrong with intervening if it's to help people. Helping people is intervening with their karma. It surely is. But please, do it. Good. Nothing wrong with that.
But doesn't that prevent them from increasing their karma?
What?
Doesn't it prevent them from increasing their karma?
No, it obviously helps. If you can help somebody not get sick, if you can help somebody not be driven over by a car, how kind of you. That's what compassion is to help others in any way you can. Nothing wrong with that. Just because you sowed the seed in the ground doesn't mean you sit back and go, oh, well, I sowed a poison seed. I've just got to let it ripen now. How ridiculous. If you can pull it out, please pull it out. The same with ourselves. We're going to talk about that tonight, is how you purify karma. As much as possible. Let's pull out the seeds as quickly as we can. Just because you sowed the seed doesn't mean you can't pull it out. That's what purification means. So helping others stop receiving the results of their negative karma the same. That's called compassion. Fantastic. The more the better.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's have a break. I don't know what you're supposed to do now, but there it is. 5:45. Dinner time, isn't it? Huh? Dinner? Gosh, you just had tea. So then, listen. So at 7:30 we come back and we're going to talk about we're going to do the meditation on purification. We're going to talk more about karma and how you purify karma, and we're going to do that practice most nights. Yep. Yes, darling. Yes. Generally speaking, you can say about how sickness is one of the results of killing, yeah. Yeah. You finish that karma, yes, absolutely. Yeah, depending, okay, this is why, okay, this is an interesting point. This sounds pretty heavy now again, but hear my point. Let's say September 11. There's a group of people who got killed. And then there's the guys who did the killing. So usually, with the typical view we have, we feel sorry for the people who got killed and we hate the guys who did the killing. That's the usual view. But if you have this view of karma, like those two young nuns, you would have even more compassion for the pilots. Why? The victims have just finished their karma. The pilots have just begun countless lives of terrible suffering. It's sort of like, if there's a junkie, let's say you're a junkie, everybody else hates you. You're really a drag to be around, but your mother has such compassion for you because she can see that you're harming yourself. And so that's when we really, the view of karma is the basis for real, deep, genuine compassion. Because you see that we're all in the same boat. We've all been doing this stuff for countless lives. And every one life you're a victim, the next life you're the oppressor. And we keep going around in circles. And so once you've got it for yourself and you clean up your own act and you're so sick of suffering you don't want more, then it's easy to have compassion for others, even those who harm. It takes time, but it's based upon the view of karma. That's how come those nuns were like that. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, people, thank you very much. So far so good? You're not getting depressed or want to kill yourself or indigestion, or are you enjoying? Yes? Okay, so you're talking now, right, aren't you, out there? You're all chatting away, right, outside? Or is it silence? What are you doing? You like the silence? You happy with the silence? No. But aren't we going to be working out a place, Richard, for silence? For people to talk, aren't we, at some point? What happened to that? No, I know that, but why aren't we giving a place for people who want to talk? That's happening. Oh, okay. What do you mean, no? Yeah. Talking to yourself. Maybe people want to be silent. Whatever, okay. But I want to make this point, though. If you do talk, okay, if there will be talking in the few days, there's going to be a place where you can talk. The discipline for me is really important, is to not just talk about rubbish. If you're going to talk about this stuff. Otherwise, shut your mouth. It's a good discipline. It's even harder than being silent all the time. It's to focus, because then it makes it really worthwhile. You really make it a rich experience. You really rip the stuff to pieces and look into it. And that's great. But if you just want to talk about the weather or politics or where you're going next, be silent. Much better. So let's talk about how we think about food now, okay? Do a little kind of trip for the way you eat your food. As you can maybe you're beginning to see that what Buddha's on about is changing the way we think, changing our interpretation of the universe. And this means everything at every level. So right now, because we all have attachment, we're feeling our stomachs a bit empty, we're walking, we have an intention, that is to pick up our legs, walk out the door and go in that direction down to the dining room. So what's our motivation? To eat dinner. Who for? Me. So that's cool. You don't want to kill anybody, but it's called attachment. So let's change that. Let's add some new thoughts to it. Remembering every thought sows a seed in your mind, so every thought counts. So let's just do it now. Think about the food out in the kitchen, okay? Just think of it. Don't get all holy. Just think there's food out there. There's a multitude of ways you can do the thinking, but we'll do one way now. So just think, there's food out there. Then you think of the people in the kitchen. Okay, they get their pay, it's their job, but they do it. They cut the vegetables, they go shop, they cut them, they do it, they put them in the pan, they cook them. That's kind sentient beings, you know. So let's just think, how kind, thank you very much for cooking my dinner. Thank you. Then you think of all the creatures who died when you picked the carrots and died when they picked the spinach and all this. Lots of creatures died. There mightn't be meat out there, but lots of sentient beings have died. Think about them for a second. You know, just think, okay, sorry sentient beings, you know. And then now you think this food, you imagine, you're not just going to eat it for yourself. You think, okay, imagine oceans of food and think, I'm going to offer this. If I could, I would offer it to every living being in the world. So just think even briefly now, all the humans, all the animals, all the starving people, all the starving creatures, all the little animals looking non-stop for food. Imagine you offer this food to all of them. And then you think, how great that I've fed these animals, fed these humans. Just think these thoughts. Don't have all the holy feelings. It doesn't matter. You've put those thoughts in your mind. So then now, go eat your dinner. You've just made the experience different. Do you get my point? Just having new thoughts, you know, changing the way we see things. And there's even beginning to think this way, even imagining this. And I remember Lama Zopa said one time, just thinking like that. Now, the bigger your stomach, the better. Because every mouthful is more virtuous because you've just done more than just think, I want food, shove it in the mouth mindlessly. You've had the amazing thought that if you could, you would offer it to others. Just that thought is stunning. And you've put that thought in your mind and it will sow the seed, which you will nourish every day. And then eventually, guess what? You'll become compassionate and generous. That's how it grows. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. See you at 7:30.